It's interesting. It depends which rabbi you ask if they think this is a impactful and relevant topic. I do. I happen to be a little bit more mystically inclined. So this topic of miracles is something that speaks to me. Others spend a lot of time trying to explain how things are not, like how miracles can be understood rationally. That's not so much my path, but I want to kind of go through the different approaches in connection to this. And I want to talk a little bit about the book of Daniel. So let's share our screen with our people here. So this is our class, of course. Let's go all the way down. We did a lot. We've done a lot in this class, thank God. We have, after this class, 2 more classes and then a summary class. So the next class we're going to do, I brought in the topic. I'm going to do the book of Proverbs and like I'm going to talk about like what are the foundations of Jewish ethics through the book of Proverbs. I think that's going to be really good. Like what are like the general concepts you need to know when it comes to Jewish ethics. And then the next class is do Samson and Delilah. So I don't know what I'm going to talk about with that, but I want to do that story.
Probably Samson and Delilah.
Yeah, but like, what's the message? What's the message of that book?
You said we're going to do a summary class?
And then the last class is going to be like a summary class. You go through all the material, review it, and kind of
Summary.
a summary.
As you test, not for the summary.
And that will be for preparation for the test.
For the test.
Yeah, good. You can't share notes. You have to. Hi, Nina. Okay. We're not in this class. We are in this class. Okay. Sorry, so much scrolling. Okay. The book of Daniel. I think this is a bit smaller. How do you experience miracles today? Let's just talk a little bit just about just the questions. Ask the questions. We always open up with questions because this class is the biggest questions in Judaism. So let's ask the question. What is Judaism's view on miracles? So that's a very broad question. Let's try to get a little bit more focused. Does Judaism believe in, well, let's define what is a miracle, and then does Judaism believe in miracles? So what's a miracle? Could someone offer a definition? You can on Zoom as well.
I say supernatural event, an event that would not occur out of normal nature of things that you would not predict.
Something that's supernatural.
Subnatural, I don't know what it is.
What if for a specific amount of time, I would imagine, right?
Yeah.
If it's just always happens and it just becomes, I guess, natural. Right.
If it recurs.
Yeah, Rick.
I'm gonna say something, another word for it might be out of the ordinary.
Something out of the ordinary. So in addition to it being supernatural. So like let's say the Sixers win the finals. Is that that might be a miracle? That's out of the ordinary. But like I'm saying, what okay, so you're saying it's something just out of the ordinary. What? Something improbable. Okay. Improbable, supernatural, out of the ordinary. Yeah.
Can't give an earthly definition, an earthly explanation.
Raise my hand. Whoop.
Something that you can't give an earthly explanation. Yeah, Paula.
A surprising event.
Something surprising.
Yep.
Yeah. Surprising.
My
event.
being,
Yeah, I see someone raising their hand. I just can't see who it is.
It's Ellen Lightman.
Hi.
My being alive against all odds is a miracle, and frankly, made me believe in a Hashem who is personally involved with us as individuals.
So God can be, those can be two separate things also, right? Like God can be involved, but God, it might not be a miracle, right? Or do you believe every involved?
Against many, many odds. I was hit by a car last June 7th, and there were many days when doctors thought that that was going to be the end of me. And because medically, that's where it looked, it was going. And miraculously, I survived.
Okay, that's.
And
thanks
welcome
for sharing
back.
that. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Let's do one
Welcome back.
more.
We're very happy to see
Where's
you
that?
again.
See, Anne's raising her hand.
What I was going to say was sometimes it's a question of timing. That something happens that you don't expect at that time, but that saves the day. And it's merely a question of timing that you didn't expect.
Well, here's a question, interesting question. Thank you. So kind of a lot of these interpretations kind of point to the same idea, something that breaks the pattern of how we experience things, supernatural, something. Okay, this is a miracle. No, it's joking. That's true. Somebody just came in. A biblical prophet just entered the room. So, okay, here's my question for you. An interesting question. I was intending to post the class. So, like, here's a question. You don't have to answer if you don't feel comfortable. I'm going to just show people on the screen as well. Do you believe in miracles? Okay, so you don't have to answer. If you feel comfortable, do you believe that miracles happen today? Let's say like that. Okay, raise your hand if you do. Wait, and if you don't, I'm not going to say you can abstain. Okay, a lot of people raise their hand. What about on Zoom? Raise your hand if you think miracles happen today. Okay. Raise your hand if you're comfortable saying miracles don't happen today. Okay. And those who are abstaining, they can abstain as well. That's interesting. Wow. A lot of people. Wow. I'm surprised. That what?
Right, I don't know how you can define miracles without saying that God has a hand in it. Because otherwise,
Whoa.
it's really not a miracle.
That's a loaded topic there.
Well, I know it.
Okay, that's what you let you do that sometimes. You have very deep observations. I can't go into them. Yeah.
The thing is, to miss their discussion is at the end product.
Can you hear on Zoom?
No, I can't hear.
Okay, you can't hear at all. Okay. Could you just perhaps
Talk loud.
raise the volume a little bit?
Something good, something that is beneficial. As opposed to something that's an ordinary event is not enough. It's got to be something
Beneficial.
beneficial
So like
and positive.
if something came crashing down, I was saying, okay, so if it harmed an enemy, so that would be beneficial, you're saying.
If somebody is in an auto accident, they survive, it's beneficial.
If it's a calamity, then it's not.
It's not.
So
interesting.
what about the Egyptian, what about this?
Well, he would say that was a positive thing. He would say it was a positive thing for the Jewish people.
If it's good for somebody on your side.
Yeah, that's maybe what he would say. All right, but I can't speak for him. He's right here, but you could, let's do one more, Deborah.
I
Devorah.
think that Devorah, yes. A miracle is something that we as human beings cannot explain and explain easily and reliably 100%. They're out of our realm. Something that isn't expected. It shouldn't have happened. How did we win the 6-Day War? You could talk about the planning. You could talk about all kinds of things. But the reality that we won, and the same way with the Hanukkah Revolution, we won. It doesn't matter how you explain it. It's a miracle because it shouldn't have happened.
Well, we
Because
consider the birth of a
Antiochus
baby a miracle, and that
What?
a baby is a miracle and you plan that, but is a miracle because you can't do that all by yourself. These are things that are beyond us. Birth is always a miracle, no matter whether it's a human baby or an animal baby or anybody. Birth all by itself, a birth of a new star, a birth of a new planet. All these things are outside of our realm of capability.
All right, so I'm really interested by this.
Even if we participate.
So I didn't think this topic would be this engaging. I don't know. That's good. It's cool. Okay. Let's just do two more. I see Sheila and Ed. Deidre? Again. But can you you raise the volume? I know it might be different.
That was a very heavy response.
Can you
Very
hear?
deep. I'm
Yes.
gonna keep it a little more simple.
Okay.
As a Yid, as a Jew, we have a moon and we have patience. For night, you go to bed. The Almighty
Mhm.
is your soul. Every morning, Baruch Hashem, He returns it to
You
you.
wake up.
That's not a miracle. Explain it,
Yes.
don't explain it, modern science, who knows? It's a miracle. To me,
So that's the topic we're gonna talk about like a little bit later in, is like seeing. So it could be, there's miracles that are overt, like open, and there's like hidden miracles or miracles that are part of everyday life. That could be an expansion of the term miracles.
everything's
So-
a miracle.
So that, we're gonna see, there's gonna be opinions like that, okay?
I'm talking last night to my Chris on the phone, and we're talking, and we're like, this is a miracle. We can sit. He's 5 miles away, and we're on the phone. We can learn.
That's another thing we're gonna talk about. Did you see my notes? No.
We got it.
I actually wanna open that up, because I
You know,
wanna open up the
who
doc.
gave us our iPhone?
Who
Steve
gave you?
Jobs, on loan from
Moshe?
Baruch Hashem. That's the right answer.
Okay.
Well.
I'll make it.
Well,
Okay, let's, we received some very good definitions here, thank you. I wanna move on to another question connected to this. I wanna kind of then go into Daniel a little bit. And then go into some material on miracles. I'm already gonna say up front, I'm very connected to miracles. I'm connected to the concept of miracles. I'm connected and trying to seek them out, trying to live a life that can push us toward an experience of miracles. Is something I think about, actually. So I want to share with you some of my thoughts on that. Some like perhaps some of my experiences with that as well, if we have time. Okay, but so let's make this a little bit smaller. 1 second. One moment. Thanks for reading. Okay. Okay, so here is what led to the drop off from biblical times to today regarding miracles. That's an interesting topic, right? So in biblical times, there were a lot of open miracles. And today, it's not like, I don't know, would you agree? I think we can agree that the miracles we experience today perhaps are not the same as in biblical times, with it as how it's depicted in the Bible. Would anyone disagree with that? What? For like, not because they want to disagree, because they actually think that way? Larry or Bob? What?
I would disagree with that. I think
Okay,
If you're looking at the biblical miracle, it's something big, it's supposed to prove something, it's supposed to demonstrate something. The drop off is really more, what do you define as a miracle? I will tell you a flower is a miracle. I honestly believe that.
so, okay, so I guess what I'm saying is, so you're acknowledging that there's a shift in types of miracles, right? Like there are very, I'll show you my sense. You tell me.
Understanding of miracle.
So one moment. So my sense is that there are very open miracles that are described in the Bible. You have Elisha healing somebody. You have the sea splitting. You have the plagues. You have some of the miracles in the book of Daniel, if you got to read it, with the lion's den and a few other miracles as well. These are very open miracles. My sense is that the nature of miracles, if you do accept that there's a state of miracles today, it's a little bit different. Do you disagree with that, Larry? Okay. Do you disagree with that, Bob?
Well, I think it depends on who's doing the miracle. Okay, I said before that without God, you don't have a miracle. That's my personal opinion.
Okay.
But thank you. But the truth of it is, we call all kinds of things, they just call the flower a miracle. There are all kinds of things we can call miracle, but as I say, without God's input, I don't think it's a miracle. And I'll tell you.
Okay,
it's a
but
perfect example.
So like I'm not,
where we
so that topic is that's like a little bit of a different topic. I feel like I'm not disagreeing with you, or I'm not actually like focusing on that piece right now. I'm saying, like, I guess I'm more talking about the nature of it, not the cause of it. Like the natures of the miracles. Do you think it's different today than it was in terms of how it's depicted? Not dependent on who is responsible for it.
That's a good question. question, obviously. Um, If you're addressing it for me.
Yeah.
I would have to say. It's a matter of perception. What we call a miracle in the Torah. The Torah itself doesn't say it's a miracle. We say it's a miracle. And in fact, it probably was a miracle, because as I say, it had God's hand in it. But the Torah doesn't really define it that way. And it's
It talks
important
about
how we
oats,
define-
mofet.
how we define it.
Okay, so you're, okay, that's different, a little bit of different. That's a little bit of a different direction, back to that, yeah, yeah.
To me, there's a difference between miraculous and miracles. Having a baby is miraculous, nature is, the sun rises and the flowers bloom. But
So
then
what's a
there are-
miracle in your
there are
definition?
Big things like people who survived the Holocaust, those were miracles.
Okay,
Um,
so that goes back to the definition of miracle a little bit.
Yeah, to me, it
Okay.
just goes back to it's affecting a lot of people, and there's the fact that they survived, my parents survived, was amazing and a miracle. And just the things that happened so we could get through. And people did and many did not, and to me, that was a miracle, having those people.
Okay, anybody want to add something on Zoom? I kind of want to get, Devorah?
I think that she's leading into something. There's something, the pull and push between good and evil, between the Yetzer Tov and the Sitra Akra, between light and darkness, all that balance. When we're battling the battle, and we're doing it for the right reasons, God willing, and that is God willing, and we think it's not going to happen, and we're doing all the effort, and we're not, we can't. And Bob has a point. There's a godliness factor in it that if we, that goes into a miracle. And the godliness is that we understand that we couldn't do it by ourselves, that this was incredible. So that if you're talking about talking about the Shoah, or whether you're talking about the splitting of the Red Sea, it really, Sea of Reeds, it really doesn't matter what it is. It's that God had to have a hand into it. And that's metaphorically, of course, and to be able to help us to pull away from the darkness.
Okay, so I appreciate that. That's another layer onto the idea of like something a break from the pattern of nature. You're adding on something, Hashem as the agent of that, which I think enhances that as well. Let's hold on to that. That's like another, that's connected to the definition of it, but I guess doesn't play as much into what I want to teach. So I'm going to put it on the side. All right. Let's do a little bit of the book of Daniel. Okay, and the real question is, how do we experience miracles today? That's like a heavy question. Like, do we have control over that? Can we do something to experience more miracles today? Or is it something that Hashem decides? If you believe in Hashem, is it something that perhaps we have to open up our eyes to? So that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's see some of the miracles in the book of Daniel. But let's just do a little bit of an intro to the book of Daniel. Here are some links, some links I use for this class. So the goal of this class is to help you gain familiarity with the Tanach. So that's why I wanted to do another book of Tanach, Daniel. We're not going to get through the whole book, obviously, but a few chapters, you'll get a feeling for it. Now, most people don't know about this book. A lot of it's written in Aramaic. So that's also like a little bit of a obstacle to people who are trying to like get familiar with Tanakh. But the story, here's the text is basically split into two parts. The first part is you have like stories, basically Nebuchadnezzar's dream, the fiery furnace, feast, Daniel in the lion's den. Okay, and the second part is a lot of visions. And these visions are very kind of well known. They're very like mystical visions of what's going to be throughout history and in the future. This is one of the places, the book of Daniel, there's only a few places that talk about the rest. We talked about this a few weeks ago, the resuscitation of the dead. Daniel has a spot where he talks about that because he has visions for the future. This is basically the ram and the goat, the he-goat, the interpretation of Jeremiah's prophecy, the angel's revelation. Okay, so here, that's basically the structure. You have some stories and you have visions. Just a little bit on Daniel. This is from 457 to 360. This is current Chabad website. He was a Jewish scholar, interpreter of dreams. His famous for sexually interpreting the proverbial writing on the wall. We're going to see that in Surviving Lions then. And here's just a little bit of his early life. So this story took place in the exile. Okay, that's something to think about. After the land was conquered and the Holy Temple of Jerusalem was destroyed, Nebuchadnezzar deported the Jewish people and forced them to relocate to Babylon. Among them were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. And all extraordinarily gifted young princes selected to serve as chamberlains in the royal court. Okay, so that's like the setting for the story. Let's just learn some of the miracles. Let's think about like what preceded them. I tried to turn that off. Let's think what preceded them and think about what happened around them, and then that can lead into our discussion, which is going to take place after that around Judaism's view of miracles. And I'll already tell you, it's going to be split into 3 parts. We're going to discuss the lack of open miracles today and what that means for us, and if we can overcome that barrier. Let's do a little bit of the book of Daniel. In your Humash, this can be found on page 17 in your Tanach, 1781. Download this. 17. I'm gonna project it on the screen. Oh, here it is. Okay, let's flip it. Make it a little bigger. All right, so I chose 3 stories, 3 miracles, and they both take place in 3 different eras in terms of who's running the show, in terms of who's in charge, who's governing. So this is a story, King Nebuchadnezzar. This is chapter 3 of Daniel. He commanded everyone, whoever does not fall and prostrate himself will immediately be thrown into a fiery burning furnace. Okay, that is a threat. They're going to throw the Jews into a furnace, or whoever doesn't bow down. It turned out that there are Jewish. It was told that there were Jewish people who have been appointed. They're very high up in the government, and they were appointed very high up in the government, and they're not bowing down. These men have not accepted the decree upon themselves. And so Nebuchadnezzar commanded to bring them, and these men were brought before the king. These are the names Mishael, Hananel, not Daniel. I don't remember the names exactly. Translations, 1 second. What?
Abednego, right?
Yeah, they have different names, but
The old spiritual.
Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah.
Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
Yeah, exactly. As their diaspora names. So they said to the king, Nebuchadnezzar, we are not worried about replying to you about this matter. Behold, our God, whom we worship, is able to save us. He will rescue us from the fiery burning furnace and from your hand, O king. But if he does not, let it be known to you, O king, that we do not worship your God, and to the golden statue that you have set up, we shall not prostrate ourselves. Okay, so here is a threat. He says, but if you do not prostrate yourself, you will immediately be thrown into a fiery burning furnace. And who is the God who can save you from my hands? Okay, so it's like a threat. It's like a challenge to God, basically. Nebuchadnezzar was filled with fury. So he exclaimed and commanded to heat the furnace 7 times more than was normally heated. He commanded the strong men of his guard to bind them, to throw them into the fiery furnace. They were bound in their cloaks. That because of the king's command, the furnace was so overheated, those men who carried up were killed by a flame of fire because it was so hot.
Can
They
I ask a
felt,
question, Rabbi?
yeah,
Why are these, when we say these are Rishal, Hananiah, and
Yeah.
whatever, but, so are these, Babylonian names? for the
yeah,
same
Babylonian
people?
names that were given to them that they were using in the court. That was like their names at the time. Saying why are they using those names specifically to describe them? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, 'cause
Yeah,
we know who they were.
correct. I know. Yeah. They they're bound and do we not throw you? So true, behold, I see 4 unbound men walking in the fire, and there's no wound on them, and the appearance of the 4th one is like an angel's. So he brought them out. He brought them out. Saw these men over whose bodies had fire had no effect. The hair of whose heads were not singed, whose cloaks were not unaltered. Blessed is the God of Shadrach. He said, Nebuchadnezzar sent his angel and saved the servants who relied on him and disobeyed the king's order, offered their bodies in order not to worship or prostrate themselves to any other God than their God. Okay, then he says, I issue a decree that any people, nation, or language who will speak amiss about the God of da, his house will return into a dunghill. So there's a certain, it impacted him to change his mind in relation to the God of Israel. Okay, the component I guess I want to pay attention to is the fact that they were willing to give over their lives for this cause. That's something we're going to think about when it comes to miracles. This idea of they stretched themselves beyond, and so God kind of met them beyond and saved them. That's an idea that we're going to think about when it comes to miracles. So that's one component, one miracle that appears in the book. Here's another one. So this is King Belshazzar. This is another generation of kings, and the story goes like this. Is chapter 5. So here's the case where so they brought the golden vessels that they had removed from the sanctuary. They drank wine and praised the gods of gold and silver, copper, iron, and wood and stone. Just then, fingers of a human came and forth and wrote on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace, facing the candelabra. And the king saw the palm of the hand that was writing. The king's appearance at Rum changed, and his thoughts bewildered him. The belt around his waist opened, and his knees knocked one against the other. The king cried aloud, bringing the astrologers, the Chaldean stargazers, and the demonists. So I want to show you another thing that we're going to think about. Okay, each of these stories plants another seed. So here he has other people who can interpret this kind of miracle. Perhaps miracles and these types of extraordinary events, supernatural events, were somewhat commonplace in some capacity. These magical experiences. That's also something we want to keep in mind. In the time of the Bible, so I want to talk about this going forward. Time of the Bible, miracles were much more prevalent, like these open types of miracles, among the Jews and overall. And that's going to be relevant for us as to why miracles or that could be a reason why miracles were prevalent among Am Yisrael at the time as well. Let's hold on to that idea. Hopefully I'll remember it. Okay. So the king cried aloud, brought the astrologers, etc. This is the idea of the writings on the wall. This is the proverbial writing on the wall. It could be from this story, as the people say. Like when you say, I saw the writing on the wall. The king exclaimed to the sages of Babylon, any person who will read this writing and tell its interpretation will wear royal purple with a chain of gold on his neck and will rule 1/3 of the kingdom. Then all the king's sages came in, but they could not read the writing. Then King Belshazzar was greatly bewildered, and his appearance changed upon him, and his nobles were confounded. And so Daniel was brought before the king. The king spoke up and said to Daniel, you are Daniel, etc. I've heard about you. The sages, but I've heard about you that you are able to provide interpretations, etc. Daniel replied and said before the king, let your gifts remain yours and give your reward to others, but I will read the writing for the king and make its interpretation known to him. So another thing to think about is, I've heard of you that you're able to provide interpretations and resolve difficulties, right? So Daniel apparently was on a higher spiritual level. It's also something to think about. That's another thing we're going to think about when we go forward into discussing miracles. So he ends up being able to interpret this. He says here, he tells him to humble your heart. You exalt yourself against the Lord of heaven. and he explains what it means. God has counted the years of your kinship, terminated it. You've been weighed in scales and found wanting. Your kingdom has been broken, given to Media and Persia. Those who gave the command, and they clothed Daniel royal purple with a chain of golden neck. That night he was slain. So this is the second miracle. It's in the second miracle, this idea of like this magical writing on the wall that was giving over a message. The components that I wanted to talk about when it comes to that was Daniel's level, and also this idea that there's people who could perhaps had experience with this in that time period. Okay. The last miracle, and this is another, this is a third one. This is a very well-known story. This is a next generation. This is Darius. And again, this story is like, I could have taken another story in the Bible. This one had a few, another book from the Bible discusses miracles. This one had a few components I thought could be helpful for our discussion on miracles. Okay, so that's why I use it. Also, I think it's good that you get familiar with this book. Okay, so Darius received the kingship at the age of 62, and the king's prohibition. So he says, all the vices. So he said, oversaw that. Okay, Daniel was in good shape. Whoever make a request of any god or man for 30 days, other than of you, O king, shall be thrown into the lion's pit. So anybody who doesn't, whoever goes to their god, will be thrown into the lion's pit. Now, the king approved the prohibition, inscribed the writing, so that cannot be abrogated. As a result of this, King Darius inscribed the writing and the prohibition. So when Daniel learned that the writing had been inscribed, what's really interesting about this story, all these stories kind of resemble the Purim story in different ways. Like he was cloaked in garment after he did something praiseworthy. Here he's going to pray because there was a prohibition that was sealed. There was a decree that was sealed. We're thinking about, there's a lot of parallels.
Is this why Daniel follows Megillat Esther in the Tanakh?
It happened in the exile. I don't know if that's the reason why. No, that's a good question though. So when Daniel learned that the writing had been inscribed, he went home. Now, this is a source, this is one of the main sources for our customs of prayer in Shul. A lot of our laws we learn from this and from Chana, the story of Chana. But when Daniel learned about the writing had been described, he went home. He had windows open in his upper story, facing Jerusalem. So from here we learn you have to daven toward Jerusalem. From here we learn it's good to have windows. You should have windows in a shul. Okay. And 3 times a day he fell to his knees and prayed. That's where one of the sources for 3 times of prayer a day. He got on his knees. We don't do that, but he prayed and gave thanks before God, exactly as he used to do before this. These men assembled and found Daniel praying and supplicating for his God. So they approached and spoke before the king concerning the king's prohibition. Did you not inscribe a prohibition that any person who would make a request of any god or person for 30 days other than of you would be thrown into the lion's pit? The king replied and said, the matter is true, according to the law of Media and Persia, which shall never lapse. The next thing said before the king, that Daniel was one of the people of the exile of Judah, has not paid attention to you, O king. 3 times a day he prays his prayer. And then the king, when he heard this statement, was deeply grieved, and he set his heart on Daniel to save him. And until sundown, he strove to rescue him. So know, O king, that the law of Media is, etc. King proclaimed that they brought and threw him into the lion's pit. The king exclaimed to Daniel, may your God whom you serve continuously save you. A stone was brought and was placed under the opening of the pit. And the king sealed it with the signet ring and with the signet rings of his nobles that his will regarding Daniel could not be changed. Okay. The king arose in the darkness before dawn and went in haste to the lion's pit. So Daniel was thrown into the lion's pit with lions. It was sealed. He was in there by himself with the lions. As the story goes, he was miraculously saved. When he drew, meaning he miraculously survived. When he drew near to the pit to Daniel, he cried out in a sad voice. The king called out and he said to Daniel, Daniel, servant of the living God, was your God whom you serve continually able to save you from the lions? Then Daniel spoke to the king, may the king live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lion's mouth, and they did not wound me because merit was found before him. And also before you, O king, I have done no harm. The king was very pleased and he commanded Daniel be brought out from the pit. The king had to give the command, and they brought those men who had slandered Daniel, and they threw him into the lion's pit, them, their children, and their wives. They had not reached the floor of the pit when the lions overpowered them and crushed all their bones. That's kind of like the highlight, the component of the miracle, the aspect, the strength of the miracle, that it's not like these lions were wimps. They just didn't attack Daniel, but they attacked the others. Okay, so the component I want to highlight here is Daniel's preparation, his prayer, and his turning to Hashem 3 times a day in prayer towards Jerusalem. Okay, so here are the story is kind of bookended each of these stories with different aspects that we want to think about going forward. And we just want to pay attention. These are seems to be supernatural events, all three of them. The first one was the fiery furnace, right? Someone came out of a fiery furnace and they survived. That would be a news, that would be in the news, right? That would be something that was very newsworthy. Somebody was thrown into a lion's den and they survived. And this miraculous writing on the wall, if it was documented in some capacity, that would also be like something that like was an aberration. Okay, so that's what these. Let's hold that for now. Let's go to some discussions around miracles. What is it? Oh, okay. So here's our intro. We're gonna keep all that stuff in mind. We're gonna go into. I'm gonna introduction to miracles, and this is going to set the tone for our discussion around this. Okay, it's a fascinating source. And I just understood it this year. Make this bigger. Okay, so this is from the Gemara. This is from Tractate Shabbat. And it says, a rabbi's taught. It's a weird story. Okay. It once happened that a man's wife died and left a child to be suckled, and he could not afford to pay a wet nurse. So whereupon a miracle was performed for him, and his breasts opened like the two breasts of a woman, and he suckled his son. Okay, so that's the story that's described in the Talmud. Okay, it's a miraculous circumstance in the sense that this is not the ordinary way that things happen. And now our rabbis are thinking about this, and we're thinking, what should our reaction to this be? And there were two very different reactions. Okay, the first reaction was Rav Yosef, come and see how great was this man, that such a miracle is performed on his account. Okay. Abai said to him, how lowly was this man, that the order of creation was changed on his account. Okay, this is kind of a interesting debate. I wonder if we can unpack this. So anybody want to take on the first approach, which is how great was this man? Not necessarily thinking about the specific case, but overall, the fact that a miracle can happen for somebody. Why would that indicate that you're great? Yeah.
So it would have to be someone of greatness that would be given, I guess, the honor or the capability to have something so miraculous happen to them. You know, someone who's lowly and a peon wouldn't be blessed with this opportunity.
So a miracle would be a sign that somebody is worthy of
Something miraculous happened.
Okay.
Assume, based on our premise that miracles and miraculous things are good things.
Correct. Well, it's based on that approach.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to throw a little 21st century medicine in there. There have been recorded cases where males have suckled infants. If there's continuing stimulation, it turns out that male breast tissue can develop and produce milk. It's not an everyday thing. We're not talking. Okay. There are several recorded instances, it's after weeks of stimulation. There was
Okay. So this happened kind of immediately. But
no, I'm not trying to compare. I'm just trying to throw in.
Thank you.
It may have been an exaggeration of something which could happen in an unusual situation.
Okay.
That's all.
So okay. Thanks. You want to say something?
If the purpose is to save a baby, what to define a great versus a lowly man? Lowly man. And isn't the purpose to save this baby?
So that's the question. So what's this approach? So thank you. You're strengthening the question that I kind of want to ask is why could someone explain the second approach? How lowly is this man? Why would they be lowly that this had to happen, that this happened? Anybody have a thought on that on Zoom maybe?
It's sexism.
What?
It's a classic sexism.
Oh, you think it's
man has been turned acting like a woman.
but it doesn't say that. It doesn't say that he was
How lowly.
Yeah. that doesn't necessarily say that he was changed into he was.
God has punished this man to make that he can function.
I never read it like that. I always read it like
Humble.
Right, thank you.
He's a pious, humble man.
then
he's deserving
I have to see the Hebrew.
of having a miracle on his account.
Okay, that's a positive spin on it. Yeah, nobody likes the second approach, like the literal reading of it. How can we, so we try, I hear that. I'm not sure if that's the Hebrew doesn't translate like that. No, but correct. I have to give you the,
Nothing.
I think it's speaking about, like, it's seeing him in a negative way. So, how can we understand it? Anybody have an interpretation for that?
You can understand the Bible by suggesting that miracles sometimes happen because of the person's lowly position.
There, so that could be the explanation. So the book of Daniel happened in the exile. So that's gonna lead it. These two approaches of, so I'm gonna explain what you said. I'm gonna adopt that approach, and then I'm gonna go into Rabbi Linzer's approach. So whereas one approach is that miracles are great. If you're on a high level, you can achieve them and you can experience them, or you can be connected to somebody who's on a high level and you can experience them. Another approach would say that the ideal is to not be seeking out God's miracles, and the fact that things have to change. God set things in place that we should not, since biblical times, that we should not have these open miracles. And if God has to change that order, that's not ideal. What would be problematic with that? What would be problematic? Why would God want us to not have open miracles today? Why would that be a positive thing? Rabbi Linzer is going to address that right now. I already tell you kind of what he's going to say. This is the first. So Rabbi Linzer says that that the ideal, like when you have children and you're raising them, you have to do a lot for them. I happen to know this firsthand over the last year. A lot. No, sorry, it's not my therapy session. So you have to do a lot, right? As they get more self-sufficient, you back off a little bit more. They get more independence. As they get older, they go to college. They live their lives. I mean, you're always connected in some capacity, but they have more and more independence and doing more and more things on their own. This second approach basically is saying that miracles are not ideal because they hint to the fact that we are not able to do things on our own. We need God's intervention to change things, God's intervention to make things better. And if we can get to an optimal place where we can be able to move things forward in creation and do things on our own to make the world better, that's the optimal state. And so there's really two approaches. Like, is it better to have miracles or is it not better to have miracles? And Rabbi Linzer connects this to, and a really fascinating, I wanted to share this idea with you. He connects this to the sin of Adam and Eve. He says, Adam and Eve, they ate from the tree of knowledge. And most understand that to be, it's commonly understood to be a horrific sin. Now they're able to judge between good and bad, and they're going to become like God. He says that the eating from the tree of knowledge and them falling was basically was like inevitable. He says Hashem wanted humanity to do that. Hashem wanted them to eat from the tree. Hashem wanted them to gain judgment and discernment. And the fact that they fell because now they have to make decisions on their own. They have to figure out the world, and they didn't succeed. They didn't succeed that way. And that's why God had to restart in the time of Noah and bring the flood. When God brought the flood, God set a covenant in place with them, and God gave them guidance on how they can do things on their own and achieve on their own. And the hope was that on their own, they would now be able to build a better world. And so according to Rabbi Linzer, the sin of Adam and Eve wasn't necessarily a sin. It was like a necessary fall from closeness to God. God basically, go out of the house, leave the house, go try to do things on your own. We didn't succeed. That's the danger of it. But in the end, we're supposed to do things on our own. That's the higher level. Yeah.
None of us are created to be perfect, and we all learn from our mistakes, right?
Yeah.
So, but I don't know, I'm not buying that.
It's almost like what you're saying was for Adam and Eve, it was like an opportunity for growth.
Right.
It was almost like, so if you could extend this further, it was almost like a setup. Hashem put this amazing fruit in the middle of the Garden of Eden. He took his children, walked them around the Garden of Eden, and said, you can have everything else except for this one. You can't have that one. Right? So he's saying that it's like bringing your children to a candy store and saying, you can go all these stores, you just can't go to this candy store. You can't. So he could have understood, he might have understood it as like kind of like a setup in a way. And Hashem wanted them to seek that out, to seek out that autonomous judgment so that they could then do things on their own. Would it come with a fall? Would it come from would they have to detach from Hashem in some way? Yes. And that was the hard part about it. But would they have the opportunity to build themselves up? That's also true. So it's a different spin on the you're not like
Robert Linzer explained that the most profound miracles that occurred many generations later were slavery in Egypt and during redemption.
right. So this is how why am I bringing Rabbi Linzer in this discussion? There are times when God needs to do things for us. A parent needs to step in. A child is at college and they're independent and all of a sudden they get in trouble. A parent has to come over and make things better. And at times in history, Hashem has to intervene and make things better. But the ideal would be that we actually would be without the open miracles, so we can have our independence, so we get the freedom to choose and to build things up on our own.
I think God created miracles during slavery in Egypt to make things better. You had 400 years of slavery, generations of slaves, and all of a sudden you have an agent of God, Moses, go in and is going to free the people. God did miracles to convince the people of the power of God, and also convince the enemies of Israel that their God was stronger than the other gods of the surrounding nation.
Correct. So that doesn't necessarily conflict. There could be a need among us, among Egyptians. There is a need for a certain intervention, a certain lesson that needs to be taught because humanity was not able to do it on their own. There was an intervention. No?
It was an intervention, absolutely.
So I mean, it could be you're viewing it from the perspective of Am Yisrael, but it could be you're saying there was a need for God to intervene in some capacity. You're looking at me like with a confounded look. Okay. He just went somewhere.
But to Lee's point, why, the question is, why did it take 400 years for God to intervene? They were being tortured and they were being constantly, pulled away from what they were truly brought there to originally do. So why would it take, that's always been the big question.
Yeah.
Is why would it take God?
Correct. It's 210 years technically. Yeah,
right.
I agree.
It was 290.
It was 210 years, but that's also a good amount. That's a good topic. Reference why bad things happen to good people from all right, but so I just want to present this view to you. This is a view that Rabbi Linzer holds, the view that Rabbi Yitz Greenberg holds. He's kind of like a thinker within modern Orthodoxy. He basically says like the ideal is, this is an explanation for why the open miracles have fallen off since biblical times. Biblical times, Hashem was forming the nation. Hashem was trying to set a precedent. Hashem was giving us miracles so we could have them in our tradition, in the back of our minds of how Hashem can help us. Hashem, at a certain point, wanted the nation, wanted Am Yisrael, wanted the world to move forward to a more independent space. And therefore Hashem that kind of took a step back and allowed us to kind of figure things out on our own. That's why there aren't open miracles. That's that explanation. Okay. I think there's some value in that explanation. I personally don't fully connect to it just because I'm a little bit more mystical type of person. So, but I think that's I think that works nicely to explain why there aren't as many open miracles today. Now, remember we mentioned okay, I'm gonna hold on to that. I'll hold for that thought for a second. So now in the story of Daniel, so this is what I'll just show you a few things from Rabbi Linzer's thesis, and then we'll move on. There you go. Here it is. Okay. Rather than seeing the eating from the tree as a fall, Rabbi Nechama Leibowitz offers a different explanation. The sin of the first man and woman was inevitable. It was a necessary act of becoming independent, of growing up. Adam and Eve had been living like children. Everything was provided. All decisions and rules were made for them. All they had to do was obey the rules. This is not the life of an adult, and to become independent, to leave the home, inevitably some rebellion, rejection, statement of separateness would have to take place. The sin was an act of individuation. It was what allowed Adam and Eve to become adults, would have forced them to leave home, where everything was perfect and taken care of for them. Now they'd have to go it on their own. My only question for Rabbi Linzer would be like, why were there all these punishments after that? But you could do those are Because there's like after effects of becoming independent. There's all kinds of struggles or whatever. All right, let's bracket his. It's an interesting thesis. I want to bracket that. And I want to move on to the other approach. That was one approach. That Rabbi Linzer's approach, I think, reflects that approach in the Midrash, which says, how bad was it, this individual, that God had to change all of creation to create this miracle? What does that mean? God wanted us to be adults. You consistently need God to intervene for you, to do miracles for you. That's not optimal. The optimal level would be that you're able to figure things out on your own, live without the divine intervention. Yeah. Okay. What? What, Brenda? You want to share? Is it connect to us, or you want to commune?
Being for the baby, not for the father. He saved the baby. And so I
guess it would mean like this baby. I guess they would have understood like this baby was suffering. Baby was in need. Perhaps they, because of their sins or something, led them into that situation. If they were, I don't know. I'm just going by the assumption of the Gemara. What?
they are, and Hashem intervened. That's how I see it.
Yeah.
To save the baby's life.
Which is a positive thing, right? Yes.
Yeah. But
So-
it was the baby.
Correct.
See, the miracle, it doesn't seem like to me was for the father. It was a miracle he was able to produce, but it was for the baby.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying.
But there could have been something, had there been another woman.
Yeah,
suddenly
correct. That's-
dropped out of the sky, it would have been more normative.
Or if the woman was just already there. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. We have to dig deeper into this rabbi's view. I hear what you're saying. I want to go into the other view though. How great was this man? Okay. And this is where I think the story of Daniel comes is relevant for us. Daniel and Mishael and the other individuals, there were two components there which kind of were described in the book. Daniel was seemed to be on a very high spiritual level. And that's talked about in our texts, right? So this is from the Chabad website. It says that this is a different approach. It's not that God, there aren't open miracles today. There aren't miracles. It's so that we can seek out Hashem and try to bring miracles into our lives and experience the miracles. It's a little bit different thing. And the person who achieves that, how great is that person, right? So it's not that God has to change things, it's bad. The opposite. How great is that person? It's another approach. So here's from the Chabad website. God manages every aspect. There are no rules he must follow. He created nature, and he wanted a world in which things would appear as if they run on their own. Forced man to discover God on his own. The very word for nature in Hebrew is teva, which means sunk. Nature is God's way of submerging his presence under a sea of scientific laws and patterns. Man is a deep sea diver, given the task of finding God's hand, which lurks beyond the veils of nature. So there's a hide and go seek game. Every now and then God emerges and breaks through the shackles of nature. The sea is split, or our nation is saved from a seemingly hopeless situation. Is through these supernatural events that we realize that nature too is merely a creation of God. So here's an idea that God intervenes. Not necessarily, it's not necessarily a bad thing. And the more we can find God amidst nature, that's the higher level. And we're going to see in these upcoming sources that our goal, according to many, is to actually break through these veils and to experience God directly in our lives. So how do we do that? How do you do that? How can you get to this realm of the miraculous? So the Ramban speaks about people who become very righteous. It says here goes. The perfectly pious man who cleaves to his God does not separate the connection to God in his thoughts with matters of the world, will be protected, even those that arise in nature, and he will be protected from them through a miracle that will be done for him always, as though he belongs to the class of the upper world, who are not subject to becoming and destruction in the accents of time. Corn is closest to the cleaving into God, so he will be protected with superior protection. But he who is far from God in his thoughts and actions, even is not deserving of death, is sent and abandoned to accidents. And since most of the world belongs to the middle group, it's proper that they act according to the way of nature and accident. Basically, the idea is Daniel, or perhaps the other individuals in the story who were saved from the fiery furnace, they were able to somehow tap into this divinity that's here, that's in reality. If you're able to tap into that divinity, you can be elevated to a different realm. So this is the idea of how great is that person. And I'll just share with you, like I feel that I've been around individuals who I feel have been very spiritually elevated and like very on a very high spiritual level. And I've seen things happen with them that are hard to explain. I'm not saying I can't prove to you that they're miracle, but that they're miracles. But I can say that they were like changes in the way things run, certain blessings that were given, certain things that came true that I couldn't believe. And I think that it's connected to these individuals are very connected to the divine. I think they were able to kind of break out of this hide and seek game and tap in to something beyond nature. And that's something that we should be striving towards. Now, you're not able always, as individuals, we're not always able to get there, but here are two ways that can enable us to get there. So, and this is connected to the story of Daniel and the three who were saved. They were willing to sacrifice their lives for God, or they were pushing themselves to the limit. And this is a practical way, I think. If you're asking me how you can achieve miracles, this is one practical way. Okay. One is to be holy. Not all of us can do that. Okay. But another one I think is to push yourself beyond your nature. Once you push yourself beyond your nature, to do good for others, or to this case is sanctifying God's name, but push yourself beyond your nature, God stretches himself beyond his nature. And I'll give you an example. There are many times when I've pushed myself to the limit in trying to help people, and I've seen like kind of like miraculous things happen. It could be that it was this one time when somebody was not feeling well and they were in the hospital, and I didn't have the energy or time to really go there, but I pushed myself to go there. Turns out like just at that moment, they needed someone to be there. And I was able to be there with them in like their last moments. Those types of things actually happen a lot for those who are pushing themselves beyond their comfort level, and they're stretching themselves beyond that. I think that's like the place of miracles. So I don't know how to explain it exactly, but like maybe because you do it, God follows, or because you step beyond yourself, and then you step into somebody else's like divine help, their divine guidance. You end up being their miracle. That makes sense. So I think there's like those two pieces together. I don't know if I'm explaining it properly, but like this idea, like if you step beyond yourself and you're trying to extend yourself to other people, number one, God follows and God does that with you. But beyond that, sometimes somebody else is worthy of being saved, and you happen to be God's agent at that moment. You're able to bring miracles to them in that way. So yeah, it happens also like with it happens with money as well. Like if you, we have to be careful and save money and put money away, etc. But sometimes if you extend yourself beyond your comfort level with that, you can see that money going beyond what you would have expected to have gone. Our sources talk about this, and I can explain it from my own experience. When I didn't have a lot of money, I would always push myself to still have guests in Shabbat, and I always found like miraculously somehow I had money to provide for that, and I had money afterwards as well. This idea of like stretching yourself, and that's the idea I think we can take a little bit from Daniel and the three who were in the furnace. The idea of pushing themselves, they push themselves to death. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying the idea of like extending ourselves beyond ourselves. If we do that, I think that's the realm of the miraculous. Yeah.
As a co-chair, bet to feel of, it's like I say to our team, the only thing that you are in control of is your effort. The Almighty is in control of the result, i.e. our efforts produce miracles.
I want to share two more things with you. We have three. We have two. If I just have 2 to 3 more minutes of your time, and then we'll summarize.
4 o'clock and we'll be here.
If I had 2 to 3 more minutes of your time. Another thing is to stay around holy people or holy things. That can be helpful. It's like vicariously connecting through that. But I just want to share with you one more thing and then kind of summarize. we talked about this in the very beginning of our class. There's different types of miracles. There's open and hidden miracles, right? So there are a lot of miracles. We've been talking about open miracles, how you can experience open miracles. One approach was what we shared is that you elevate yourself to a very high spiritual level, like Daniel. Another approach was to extend yourself beyond yourself. I think that's like the kind of the realm of the miraculous. But we talk about miracles that are not open miracles. There's a lot of miracles that are going on right now. A lot of you mentioned this in the very beginning. And so we talk about this in the Shemona Esrei. Your mercies never fail us. We talk about your miracles are with us every day, right? Your miracles are with us every day. What does that mean? How do we understand that? So this is a really nice text. This is from what we learned last year. Ask Rabbi Jack. He says something really nice. He goes, we do have miracles today. They're just of a different kind than the ones you're thinking about. If you went back 3,500 years ago to the time of the Exodus, you saw the clouds of glory in the manna, you would no doubt be duly impressed. Bring someone to that era back with you. Show them your smartphone. Take their picture with it. Play them a few songs. Record a video. Show them Google. How many miracles is that? Now show them a video of the moon landing. Wasn't that a miracle? You can hop on a plane and be on the other side of the globe in 12 hours. Is that not a miracle? If we dismiss our miracles as a simple application of naturally occurring scientific principles, remember that mankind has always excelled at dismissing miracles. Remember that flood that wiped the world out a few generations ago? That was some freaky storm, huh? The Red Sea split? Yeah, that happens sometimes. Mana, sure, that's a natural phenomenon. We're surrounded by miracles. We're just as able to justify miracles like the 10 plagues in the Revelation at Sinai as we are to dismiss miracles like strawberries and your endocrine system. God still works miracles. They're all around us. They just had to be appropriate for the times in which we live. Our miracles may be less overt in some ways than those of our ancestors, but in both cases, people have the ability to embrace them, dismiss them, and to live their lives based on the implication of those decisions. So that's one component of like beyond the open miracles, the access to them, if that's good or bad. There are miracles going on all around us. We have to open our eyes to them. And one more thing I want to share with you is a beautiful idea is that there's a verse that says, and share this like in the Ask Rabbi Jack. There's a verse that says, God does miracles alone. That usually means God alone. Not anybody else does the miracles. God alone. But this could be understood a different way. God does miracles alone. Like God does miracles all the time that we don't even know about. Meaning, there's things that happen that are miracles now. There's open miracles. There's a whole other component of miracles. God does miracles for us that we don't even know about. It's like a parent and a child. A child thinks that their life is just things just go along as they are. They do not know there's a parent setting up their schedule, a parent protecting them from this, a parent withholding them from that danger, and saving them from this horrible thing. Hashem is doing miracles we don't even know about all the time that aren't even with us. Hashem's saving us from things we don't even know about. So there's different types of miracles. To summarize, there's open miracles. Okay, we have open miracles in the Bible. There seem to be much more prevalent. Now, perhaps they're not as prevalent. What do we do with that? One explanation is that's not necessarily a negative thing. In the book of Daniel, there are open miracles, but we don't see that today. That's not necessarily a negative thing. Maybe in the Bible, they needed those miracles because that was to strengthen us. That was to give us faith in God's providence. Now, Hashem wants us to go on our own, like children who are becoming independent. That's Rabbi Linzer's view. Or there were open miracles in the Bible because they were on a very high level. I didn't add this, but prophecy was removed. We don't have prophecy now. We're on a lower level. Now we have to work to access those miracles. That's the other approach in the Talmud of how great this person is who achieved the miracle. There are ways to do so. One is to constantly try to grow, trying to expand our consciousness and grow in spirituality, to have access to that. Not everybody's able to do that. Perhaps you can hang around individuals who are, or perhaps you can be around holy places that can elevate you. Another way is to, what we saw from the story of Daniel and the three, is to extend yourself beyond yourself. I think that's the realm of the miraculous. If we do that, you can see miracles in two ways. One is Hashem acts to you as you act. I think the more you put yourself out there, the more Hashem will put himself out there with you. Number two, and this is equally important, sometimes if you're able to put yourself out beyond yourself, you enter in other people's God's blessing to them, and you become God's messenger to help them, and you see miracles as well in your life as you're doing that. I think that's how you can enter the realm of miraculous in my head today. Finally, beyond the open miracles, there are other types of miracles that are going on all the time around us today. There's hidden miracles. There's a lot of miracles that are going on that we don't recognize the miracles, but they are miracles if we look deeper into them, like the iPhone, like your phone call with your chavruta. There's miracles that go on. The more we open our eyes to those miracles, the more we will feel like we're living a miraculous life, because I think we are. I think there's so many amazing things we have to open our eyes to them. Finally, there's miracles that are happening we don't even know about. Only God knows about them. And that's I think that's like a comforting and a beautiful thought. The fact that Hashem is always thinking about us. If you can think about your children or your family members or your loved ones that you helped raise, and you saw that you did all these things for them, they never even knew. But you knew. Hashem knows. We don't always know, but Hashem's doing those miracles on a daily basis. So, Sharkal, thank you.
Very good. How about 3D printers?
3D printers.
Pretty awesome.
When we get the 4D printers, then I'll be.
But yeah, that's off. Debbie. Michelle. Audrey. Oh, hi, Audrey.
People instead of bodies.